Well, howdy. Oh, I love being here. I always love singing for older white people. Yeah, boy, what a day. Past couple days. You live in an extraordinary and very special place, don't you? You know, that's just obvious. We were here most of yesterday and then all of today and got around a good bit. I mean, hell, you to start your own community library. You know, hell, that you don't see that. And there's a can out here to contribute. They got to move into a larger space, and then to take over this theater and restore it the way it has, so it belongs to the community. The rivers that you're protecting. You are kind of self-starting people. You don't wait for somebody to tell you what to do. You just get together and figure out how to do it, don't you? That's a model for the rest of us, I'll tell you. It's delightful. We got around a good bit, went out to the lighthouse. Brian took us up to the top. He's going to take me to the Oddfellows Hall tomorrow. You took over the Oddfellows Hall, too, didn't you? And brought it back to life. God damn it. All right, I'm going home and joining the Oddfellows. Hell with this. Well, yeah, good to be here in a political year. That old Idaho blackie, that old wobbly up in Post Falls, Idaho, used to say, politicians, most of them so crooked they got to screw their socks on in the morning. So damn dumb they couldn't pour piss out of a boot if the instructions was wrote on the heel. I can hear him. He was the case. He'd say, politics. Poly is Greek for many, and ticks are blood-sucking insects. Railroading on the Great Divide, nothing around me but the Rockies and sky. It's there you find me as years go by. I'm railroading on the Great Divide. Now, at the onset here, those of you who may have heard me should probably turn to those who may have not and calmly reassure them this is in fact what happens when I sit on a stage. Not much more. This is about it. You will notice no sudden or dramatic change in my instrumental or vocal attack, as it were. It's nice to know there are some things in early 21st century American industrial economy that don't change very fast. I am one of those. This is nonetheless an American folk song. Did you recognize it as such? You don't hear them much anymore. Don't hear them on your AM radio. Folk singers hardly ever sing them. That's because they're boring. Folk music is boring. Whack, fall the dido, blowy winds, hi-ho, hell, that's boring. But this is a program of folk music. I am a folk singer. You are ostensibly the folk, n'est-ce pas? That means we own this song together, right? It's ours. And we have thereby inherited certain social obligations which we will faithfully discharge. We are going to sing this damn song together, boring or not. Got it? The louder you sing, the better I sound. And those of you who do not sing, and that goes for you kids too, especially you kids, I will see to it that a Mormon missionary is sent to each of your homes. Watch it. And I don't want to have to remind you, again, that in a mass marketing economy, a revolutionary song is any song you choose to sing yourself. Welcome to the revolution. Railroading on the Great Divide, nothing around me but the Rockies and sky. It's there you'll find me as years go by, railroading on the Great Divide, huh? Hey, railroading railroading on the Great Divide. Nothing around me but the Rockies and sky. It's there you find me as years go by, railroading on the Great Divide. You kids who are eating popcorn don't have to sing. That's disgusting. I don't want to have to look at that, all right? So it's okay. Just stuff yourself. Where was I? Oh, I was going to play this. Well, I actually said I don't travel much anymore. I've been at this trade this is my 35th year in this trade. And as I begin to cruise into my 70th year, now I got the congestive heart failure, and so I had to stop touring, and I stick pretty close to home. But I've been doing the cardiac rehab exercise class 3 days a week in the hospital. And been doing that for a number of years. And then I've been doing the proper medication, took up yoga, some meditation, and I feel pretty good. Damn it, I feel good. And I mean, good enough to be able to leave town at least once a month, and this is your month. And now I don't want there'll be an intermission here. I don't want, that we will have an intermission to pish. And I don't want anybody, I'll be out in the lobby hanging out with you, anybody lurching up to me with any folk remedies and cures for congestive heart failure, for heart disease. I come from Nevada City, California, the new age chronosynclastic infundibulum of the new world. I mean, the epicenter, as it were. I mean, there's so many healers there, it makes me sick. I have got a Zen acupuncturist, wears a blindfold, uses darts. I'm moving. God, yeah. There's some people down at the foot of Broad Street there, main drag, at the foot of Commercial Street there by Pine Street, psychologists. And they want to charge me $100 and suspend me in pitch darkness in a tank full of water called sensory deprivation. I said, hell, I can listen to Leonard Cohen records and get the same thing for nothing. My wife and I have invested in a timeshare mausoleum. That's a strange idea. What, half a year you're in somebody's garage? I don't know. No, it really is that kind of a new age sort of town. I mean, it is. That old Jesse McVeigh said, no matter how new age you get, old age is going to kick your ass. We have the only little Catholic church, St. Canice, that's Joanna's church, the only one I ever saw that has low-calorie, high-fiber communion wafers. They're called I Can't Believe It's Not Jesus. Take your head out the window and see how it feels. Old number 9's a-coming the fastest on wheels. At 90 an hour, she whistles with pride and thunders out over the Great Divide. Hey, rolling on the Great Divide. Nothing around me but the Rockies and sky. It's there you find me as years go by, railroading on the Great Divide. Oh, shit, come on. When your memory goes, forget it. Call that a senior moment. In California, we call it a rolling blackout. God, let's see, what was I doing? Well, at Nevada City, yeah, that's where I'm from. You been to Nevada City? Why? Look where you're from. It's an interesting old town, though, isn't it? It's a pretty old town. I like it. A lot of odd folks up there. Now, the gold mine, of course, the mines have long since closed, except for the 15-1 up in Allegheny. But there are still a lot of people that roam around up in the foothills there that have their little private gold claim out that's hidden, that's been in their family for generations, and they go out and work it. There's one fella up there, takes his blasting, his dynamite in to blast with on the back of a mule, he says, so the Forest Service don't hear the sound of a truck going in there. What are they? It took 40 sticks of dynamite in there on the back of his mule. One of those sudden storms boiled up over the Sierra, and that mule got lightning struck. And all that dynamite went off at the same time, blew a hole in the ground 40 feet deep. And all they found in that hole was that fellow's hat and that mule's ass. But now this plastic surgery is a wonderful thing, you know. And plastic surgeons gathered up what was left, worked on it for a year, and today that man is the President of the United States. Stick your head out the window and see how it feels. The number 9's a coming the fastest on wheels. At 90 an hour she whistles with pride, thunders out over the Great Divide. Hurry, roll on the Great Divide. Nothing around me but the Rockies and sky. It's there you find me as years go by. I'm rolling on the Great Divide. Well, my intention, when I did find out I had this heart trouble, was to stay home. And to do that, I started doing a radio show at the request of Robbie Osmond over there at KPFA, who thought I ought to be doing it. So I did 100 of those Loafer's Glory, the Hobo Jungle of the Mind radio show. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Oh, yeah, they have that over at KZYX. They did. Well, the idea is it's not their fault. It's me. I did 100 shows, but in order for me to stay home, I had to get a certain amount of underwriting, to pay the bills, and that didn't happen. So I just simply had to go back to work, and get healthy enough so that I could go back to work. And I don't have the energy to do both. But I tell you, it's the best thing I ever did with my life, Loafer's Glory. And we got people working on it now, trying to figure out how to do it. And I intend to get back to it. And that's what I intend to spend the rest of my life doing. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a radio story. Let's see. I'll get around to singing again here in a minute. I was sharing a park bench in San Diego some years ago with old Hank Penny. Hank Penny was a banjo player, guitar player, storyteller, kind of like an early Grandpa Jones in the early days of radio. He told me on that park bench that he had been on the first coast-to-coast radio broadcast in the history of the known universe. He said that it emanated from Camden, New Jersey, and was sponsored by Standard Oil of New Jersey, and the master of ceremonies was the great Will Rogers. Well, Hank Penny was there in the studio tuning his banjo, and he overheard a conversation between Will Rogers and the president of Standard Oil of New Jersey, who was there for that historic occasion. And Will Rogers said, "Now, this is the first time anybody's going to talk to thousands, millions of people for the first time. Caesar couldn't do it, Alexander couldn't do it, but I'm about to do it, so it better be damned important. What should I talk about?" "Well, Will," the president of Standard Oil said, "you should remind the people out there that Standard Oil of New Jersey is a service company." Well, he didn't know what that meant. He walked around, thought about it for a minute. They stood him up in front of the microphone, threw the switch, and there he was alive in front of all of America and parts of Mexico and Canada for the first time in history. And he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I've been asked to offer a few remarks about Standard Oil of New Jersey, especially as regards their policy of service." Now, I didn't know what that meant, but then I cast my mind back to my daddy's old ranch in Oklahoma and remembered that we had a big stud bull. He's talking to millions of people. And the farmers, the neighbors, would bring their cows by for service. Well, I asked my Daddy, "What is this service we have been offering?" He said, "You're too young to know about that, son. Nature will provide that information in due course, and by the time you've got it, you'll be so glad you got it, you won't care where it came from." Same stuff they always tell little kids. Well, I was disappointed But then my daddy went away on a selling trip. He sold lightning rods part-time for a firm out of Des Moines, Iowa. And the hired hands were out stretching wire. I was up at the big house alone when a neighbor came by leading a cow, asking for service. I thought, well, this might be my opportunity to figure out what that might be. I run him into the pen, closed the gate, climbed up and sat down on the top rung to watch. My neighbor said, "Get down off of there, son. You're too young to know about that." And he sent me packing. I was sore disappointed. But then I knew round back of that pen was a high board fence, and in that fence was some knotholes. I snuck around quiet, rolled some cordwood up against the back of the fence, clambered up on it, put my eye on one of them knotholes, and I peered through. And ladies and gentlemen, I saw right there in front of me exactly what it is Standard Oil's been doing to the people all these years. Ask any old-timer around old Cheyenne, railroad in Wyoming is the best in the land. A long steel rail and a short cross tie laid out over the Great Divide. A railroad on the Great Divide. Nothing around me but the Rockies and sky. It's there you find me as years go by, railroading on the Great Divide. Thank you. Thank you. Oh boy, it's good to finally get here. I was here, 10, 12 years ago? Is that true? Does anybody recognize me as having been here before? Swear I was. It's changed some. I was? No, I wasn't. I was here. I was in this theater. Yep, okay. You testify to that. You tell them. No, I love being a Californian. I've always wanted to be a Californian part of my life, and this is that part. I like it a lot. How I got to be a Californian, well, I lived in Spokane, Washington, if you can call that living, and the land that time forgot. At the time, I had the little kids, and my kids were involved in a young writers program. Now, do they do that around here, where they put writers and poets in the public schools and teach writing skills? Well, they did that young writers thing in Spokane, and my kids were involved in that. And it was my son Brendan was. And of course, then they do the local Young Writers Conference, and then a citywide, and then finally a statewide. Well, the statewide one was out at Cheney, Eastern Washington University, one year, and they asked me to come out and tell stories to the kids, because, Brendan was involved in that. So I said, okay, I'd do that. And I was going to behave myself, because I had to live there at that time. But I got to this huge auditorium out there. It looked like a dirigible hangar, and there are about 3,100 young faces out there, none of them with any prospects anybody could detect. And along the side of the stage was a suit and tie crowd, the principals and the people from the school district, and then the fellow from the Chamber of Commerce who was going to speak after me. Something inside of me snapped. And I got to the microphone, and I looked out of that sea of unsuspecting faces, and I said, "You are about to be told one more time that you are America's most valuable natural resource. Have you seen what they do to valuable natural resources? Have you seen a strip mine? Have you seen a clear cut in the forest? Have you seen a polluted river? Don't ever let them call you a valuable natural resource. They're going to strip mine your soul. They're going to clear cut your best thoughts for the sake of profit unless you learn to resist, because the profit system follows the path of least resistance, and following the path of least resistance is what makes the river crooked." Ha! Well, there was great gnashing of teeth and rending of garments, mine. And I was borne to the door screaming epithets over my shoulder, some of the effect of, "Make a break for it, kids. Flee to the wilderness." The one within, if you can find it. Well, I left. I moved to California. I did. But I sent them a letter back to their little literary magazine. I respect kids. I said in that letter many sage things, but the most sage of all I learned from my mother. I said, "If you learn anything in your barn of learning, let it be this, that being likable will get you further than talent." Do I know this? No, I don't need that. Well, I sang them this here song on that dismal occasion. And it was for a song for the liberation of children that I made up for the occasion. Oh, look what I found out here in the backyard. It's fuzzy and crawls like it's going somewhere. When I open my hand up and ask you my question, you thump me and holler, don't bring it in here. I had me a thought that I wanted to tell you. I had an idea I wanted to share. But you make me feel like I don't know nothing, and sometimes I wonder if you even care. Now mommy's out getting her hair up in curlers, and daddy's wrapped up in his football and beer. And maybe they think that I'm just a damn nuisance, but I sure as hell didn't ask to be here. Oh, I ain't a broom you can hide in a closet, and I ain't a dog you can bribe with a treat. I'm tired of your threats and your punches and promises, and I'd run away, but I can't cross the street. Surrounded by teachers and preachers and parents, you say everybody knows better than me, but I know some things that you never thought of, and you'd be surprised at the stuff that I see. Well, I see the ants, and I see the butterflies, and I see the birds in the tops of the trees. I got me a camera that doesn't miss nothing, and my friends are anything smaller than me. I've tried all I can to get your attention. I'll have to try something else, I suppose. When you tiptoe in to tuck in my covers, I think I'll sit up and bite off your nose. Now everyone's trying to get liberated. You all got the notion you want to be free. Red folks and poor folks and black folks and women. Now all you damn grown-ups quit picking on me. Two songs. Well, yeah, my kids kind of grew up, when they were little kids, they grew up with stories, and told them too. Brendan would get sent home from school for telling stories, and he was a Montessori kid. When you get sent home from Montessori, you have blown it in a major way. It's hard to do. What got him sent home the first time, it was, oh yeah, he was about that high. It was, what's invisible and smells like worms? Bird farts. I thought the kid had a future right then. I said, good kid. And what was that other one? It was another one that the teacher really didn't like. He said, why does the crack in your butt go up and down instead of back and forth? It's a kid's question. He said, so when you're in the playground going down the slide, you don't go blah, 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 blah. Morrigan, my daughter, she was Morrigan Bell. She was right there, the Morrigan, no fooling, right there with him too. What was hers? Her first one was, what's the difference between cauliflower and boogers? Kids won't eat cauliflower. Well, they love stories, and they always had stories at bedtime too, you know. They weren't TV kids at all. Well, they liked the cowboy stories because they didn't know anything about that. It was just highly mythological to them. Their favorite story was, well, Colonel Charlie Goodnight and Oliver Loving, pioneer settlers of the old Southwest and folk heroes, both of them. Founders of the great Goodnight Loving Trail, westernmost of the great cattle trails from El Paso, Texas to Denver with a spur into Montana. In years past, in fact, I came here and I told the story about the egg-setting horse, and I've gone about and I've talked about the great turtle drive of '86, and that was a rare beauty. If you missed that, it's too bad. One about their middle years. I guess Colonel Goodnight was about 55 years old, and Oliver was maybe in his late 40s. They were quartered in Prescott, Arizona at that time. Now, the colonel built a beautiful mansion in town. He was a very wealthy rancher. Oliver handled the remuda, the horses that traveled with any herd, so he had to corral them on the outside of town where he built a little cabin, built a little one-hole outhouse. In the outhouse, he put a brand new hickory seat. Beautiful thing, and he put 2 coats of spar varnish on it because he wanted it to last a good bit of time. And then he went off into town to visit. But not anticipating visitors, he neglected to put a wet paint sign on the door of the outhouse. Well, Colonel Goodnight loped up in pursuit of Oliver Loving, and I do mean Colonel Goodnight, a man of vast and consummate dignity, silvered of mane, furrowed of brow, eagle of eye, hawk of beak, thin of lip, lantern of jaw, ramrod of spine, firm of lip, fribble of hip, lean of shank, fleet of foot, the whole 9 yards. He was a picture of the Old West. Cast about for Oliver, couldn't find him, spied the new outhouse, decided to run some field trials on it. He always admired the quality of the literature in Oliver's outhouse. He used to say, read it and wipe. Well, he'd go down. You'll notice at this point that my discourse is littered with small language tests to ensure that we're welded together as a solid unit. He went down into the outhouse and sat down. He was there for the better part of 4 hours. He couldn't get up. Well, Oliver came back. He was down there bellowing madder than a boiled owl, which is pretty mad. Don't worry about it, Oliver. He could call him Oliver. Charlie, he called him Oliver. Hot-footed it back up to the cabin, and he got him some cold chisels and a rubber-headed mallet hammer and some screwdrivers and a crowbar, a sledgehammer in case the exigency got dire. And he went down there, started poking and prodding around the colonel, him bellowing all the while, and it couldn't budge him. Finally decided to seek some professional advice. With the sledgehammer, he bashed off the front of the outhouse, and with the crowbar, he levered up the seat with the colonel poked through it, got the whole thing over one shoulder like a big L, lugged it out, and hove it. That's pluperfect passive subjunctive of the verb to heave. Hove it, I'd say, up onto the colonel's horse, and then led the whole affair off down through town. Hi, Jake. Hi, Al, greeting his friends, and then up to the doc's office. Well, the doc came out and walked all the way around the horse 2 or 3 times, and Oliver said, well, Doc, you ever see anything like that? Doc said, why, yes, I have, but not with a frame around it. I learned that Charlie Goodnight stories from an old rancher in Troy, Montana named Ralph Hahn Sr. He passed away a good bit ago. I gave him this song for his birthday. It's not a cowboy song. It's a song about getting old and having your work run out on you, the work that you were born to do run out on you. In the Southwest, in that part of the country, around Prescott, they used to call the camp cooks the old woman because they had the foolish notion that only women do cooking. But they were hard-bitten cowboys who had gotten too old, too busted up inside, couldn't sit a horse properly, and so they got put off on the chuck gang and had to handle the bedrolls and do the cooking and doctor the chilblains and saddle sores with the old Indian cures. But I guess worst of all, the way he described it was to get left behind when everybody rode into town to hoorah, and you're the one that had to have the coffee boiled up to sober those guys up for another day's work. It's a rude letdown for somebody who had led a rough and a vigorous life. Too old to wrangle or ride on the swing. You beat the triangle and curse everything. And if dirt was a kingdom, then you'd be the king. On the goodnight trail, on the loving trail, our old woman's lonesome tonight. Your French harp blows like a lone ball and calf. It's a wonder the wind don't tear off your skin and get in there and blow out the light. With your snake oil and herbs and your liniment too, you can do anything that a doctor can do, except find a cure for your own goddamn stew. On the goodnight trail, on the loving trail, our old woman's lonesome tonight. Your French harp blows like a lone ball and calf. It's a wonder the wind don't tear off your skin and get in there and blow out the light. The cook fire's out and the coffee's all gone. The boys are up and we're raising the dawn. You're still sitting there all lost in a song. On the goodnight trail, on the loving trail, our old woman's lonesome tonight. Your French harp blows like a lone ball and calf. It's a wonder the wind don't tear off your skin and get in there and blow out the light. Yeah, I know that someday I'll be just the same, wearing an apron instead of a name, and no one can change it and no one's to blame. The desert's a book wrote in lizards and sage. It's easy to look like an old torn out page, faded and cracked with the colors of age. On the goodnight trail, on the loving trail, our old woman's lonesome tonight. Your French harp blows like a lone ball and calf. It's a wonder the wind don't tear off your skin and get in there and blow out the light. Thank you. Well, it sure takes me a long ways away. A long time away, too. Been too gone from the Southwest. There's always something that snaps you back into world time, though, you know, something that brings you right back to the moment, to the day, to the times. And they are perilous times, are they not? I was so glad to see the peace people here, you know, the Alliance for Democracy out there in the lobby. I invited them to come here and put up a table. Because I believe so strongly in that. We've helped to start a peace center over in Nevada County, and it's been a little over a year old now. It's been going very, very well in a conservative rural county. Saw that sticker on the window over at the Arena Press across the street there. Said nonviolence, the anti-terrorism that works. I thought, oh yeah. Yeah, well, I don't get into that. I joined the Army. When coming out of high school, I didn't have any trade. I had nothing that I knew how to do. So I joined the Army, and you know, after a certain bunch of mishaps, got pipelined for Korea, and that's where I put my time in, was as a grunt in Korea, crawling around. And it really did. Well, I'll tell you a couple of those stories. When I got to Korea, it was a little further. This is after Panmunjom, right after Panmunjom. Life amid the ruins. I mean, life amid total devastation. It was a little house about as big as this stage, and in it were 100 babies, and they were living on a 100-pound bag of rice a month. They were all orphans, and they were all GI babies. They had all been sired by my fellow soldiers who had gyroed home. And the Korean government didn't want to acknowledge them. The U.S. government didn't acknowledge them either. I tried to raise money for them, you know, in our battalion. The commander said, "That's a good idea. Let's do that." He said, "It's a terrible thing, but eventually be a good thing because it'll gradually raise the intelligence level of the Korean people." That's the kind of things, you know, that with the way I was raised, I couldn't. And it just went on and on from there, you know, up at finally Weijongbu, the Shushan boys going out to sleep in the rice paddies in the winter when they were drained around little fires, and going out and finding one frozen to death in the morning. And having to carry him in and give him to the Katusas, the Koreans attached to us, you see, and seeing really how much they hated us. I went up to the Imjin River there at Kumari Gap. I wanted to swim in it. I wanted to wash everything away. I wanted to wash all of that away. But I couldn't swim in the Imjin because there was a regulation against it. Made me mad. But then a young Korean fellow who spoke some English, Yun Suk-han, and he said to me, well, here in Korea, when we get married, we move in with the grandparents. And But now there's nothing growing here. There's no food. Everything's dead. So when the first baby comes, there's enough food and somebody has to leave. So the old man, the grandfather, will leave and sit on a blanket over the Imjin River there with a jar of water and wait to die and then roll down into the water and be carried away. He said, you can't swim in the Imjin because those are our elders being carried away out to sea. Well, that's when I cracked, that's when I quit. I kept running away and I couldn't take it. I wound up on the troop ship Mitchell, 36 days coming home up through Adak, Alaska, great circle route, permanent KP. And I get up on the deck, though. I didn't want to be down below. There were over 2,000 troops down there, all of them smoking when the light was lit and throwing up on each other. And it was awful. It was hell. And as cold as it was on deck, I go up there and get in between the ventilating funnels where I could get out of the wind. And I just made up songs and made up poems and thought about where I was going. What am I going back to anyway? What am I coming back to? And it's so wrong, it's so evil that we have young men that are feeling the same thing now, today. And we haven't got past that. That's what makes me so damn mad. I made up a song on the Mitchell. I haven't gotten around to singing this song very much, but see if it's in there. I sailed from Seattle, far away from friends and home, across the blue Pacific to the land of morning calm. Here's a helmet and a rifle and your prophylactics too, and as sure as I'm your captain, we will make a man of you. The 105s were pounding and their thunder shook the night. I asked my bold commander, who am I here to fight? It's the slopes and the slants, it's the gooks and chinks, said he, and I wondered if their captain ever said the same of me. I've seen the mountain winter where the air is cold and still, but oh, that frozen Chosen, it was a living hell, with the fever and the jaundice and 100 kinds of mold. We were slaughtered in our mummy bags by bayonets and cold. And everywhere I traveled, from the gap at Coomaree, the Yongsan Reservation to the camps at Moonsani, from the golden plains of Incheon, my boots rotting on my feet, all I heard were crying babies while their mothers walked the street. We bought cameras, we bought watches, we bought whores, and we bought booze, with the little barefoot beggars bending down to shine our shoes. We gave them back our candy, and to answer our desire, oh, we gave them round-eyed babies who died outside the wire. I got off in Seattle and I climbed on board a train. I rode it through the mountains with a fever in my brain. I could find no reason to remain here anymore. Oh, there was no sign around me of the life I lived before. Then what's the pride in country if it robs a man of will? And what's the pride in manhood if a man will rape and kill? And what's the pride in killing if the dead will rise again? But there's a pride in knowing that the enemy's within. So listen, all you troopers, here's a lesson you should know. From an older brown-shoe soldier who marched off long ago, they will use your pride and passion for to settle all their fights. Keep your pride in your trousers and the captain in your sights. Well, now that's an angry song, isn't it? And that's why I've sung it so seldom, only started lately. It is an angry song, and that part, keep the captain in your sights, I don't feel that way about it anymore, but I had to work real hard at that, work real hard at that. I hit the trains when I got back from Korea and rode steady. I'd ridden the freight trains when I was younger, so I knew how to do it. Oh, roamed mainly over the West on the Western Divisions, drunk most of the time. I finally decided to get back to Salt Lake and sort of make a stand. I wound up there in the Denver, Rio Grande and Western Railroad Yard. And there was a house there that had free clothes and food and warmth. And it was there. But mainly, it was called Joey Hill House, Catholic Worker House of Hospitality, Dorothy Day's people. The guy I met there was a fellow named Ammon Hennessy. I met him in his 70th year. Anarchist, pacifist. Am was an anarchist, pacifist, draft dodger in 2 world wars, tax refuser, vegetarian, one-man revolution in America, wise guy. That about covers it. And Ammon sort of took over my life. You know, he just took it over. He came to me one day and said, "You've got to be a pacifist." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "Well, I gave you a book by Gandhi, but you probably wouldn't read it." He said, "You got to be a pacifist. You just got to be a pacifist." Said, "You brawl a lot." You know, I was acting out a lot. I said, "You brawl a lot, and you're not any good at it. And you're the one who keeps getting thrown through the door, and I'm tired of fixing the damn thing. You've got to be a pacifist." It was a little earthy view of it. And he explained it this way. He said, "You know, alcohol will kill an alcoholic unless he has the courage to sit in a circle of people like that and put his hand up and say, 'Hi, my name is Utah, I'm an alcoholic.' Because then you acknowledge the behavior, you can begin to deal with it, you know, and you begin to deal with the people whose lives you've messed with. And it's never going to go away. 20 years sober, you're not going to sit in that circle and say, 'Well, I haven't had a drink in 20 years, I'm not an alcoholic.' No, you're going to put up your hand and say, 'Hi, my name is Utah, I'm an alcoholic.' But it'll save your life." He said, "You got to look at your capacity and admit your capacity for violence of all kinds as a social addiction. And then you've got to learn how to deal with it every minute and every situation, every day for the rest of your life. Because it's not going to go away, but it'll save your life." Eh? Little different way of looking at pacifism, isn't it? And I said, "Okay, Ammon, I'll try that." I was ready to let go of it all. I wanted to drop it all. I mean, the whole damn manhood trip. You know, that in Korea there, a total license for total excess, excessive booze, sex, drugs, violence, you see, and a blueprint for self-destruction. That blueprint for manhood, and it took me a long time to figure out that my scoutmaster lied to me, my army sergeant lied to me, my gym instructor lied to me, even my own father lied to me about what manhood is, you know. And sure as hell, well, it took that thing in the army to show me that. And I wanted to put it all down. I wanted to get rid of it. I was exhausted. And I said, "Okay, Ammon, I'll try that." And he said, "It's not enough." I said, "Oh." He said, "You were born a white man in mid-20th century industrial America. You came into the world armed to the teeth with an arsenal of weapons, the weapons of privilege, economic privilege, racial privilege, sexual privilege. You want to be a pacifist, you're not just going to give up guns and knives and clubs and fists and hard, angry words. You're going to have to lay down the weapons of privilege and go into the world completely disarmed." Try that. Man's been dead for 30 years, over 30 years. But if there's one struggle that animates my life and why I keep on doing what I do, it's probably that one. Something for you to chew on for a while, okay? You let it set. Ammon had a favorite song. Friday night, Catholic worker tradition, and I've been in the Catholic worker houses all over the country. Friday night's a night to talk and have a discussion about some current issues. Ammon would talk about people he'd known in his life, Clarence Darrow. He had known Eugene Debs, served time with him in prison during the First World War as a conscientious objector. You know Gene Debs here, the name, the founder of the Socialist Party of the United States, who was running for the presidency while he was in prison as a CO during the First World War. Well, then Ammon would get through talking, and then me and the Cajun would sing to him, and he had this favorite song, which was Woody Guthrie's last song. By all odds, Woody was well advanced into his disease, the Huntington's, and on his way to the hospital, but he wrote this during the Korean War. I added some words to it to kind of bring it down into our time. I didn't think that Woody would mind. "Why do your warships sail on my waters? Why do your death bombs fall from my sky? Why do you burn my town and my farm down? I've got to know, yes, I've got to know why. Why do your ships haul death to my people? Nitro blockbusters, big cannons and guns. Why can't your ships haul some food and some clothing? I've got to know, yes, I've got to know. I've got to know, yes, I've got to know, friend. Hungry lips ask me wherever I go. Comrades and friends all falling around me. I've got to know, yes, I've got to know. What good work did you do? I'd like to ask you. to give you the money right out of my hand. I built your big house to hide from my people. Why do you hide so? I've got to know. Why can't we spend more to build homeless shelters? Why are the homeless here anyhow? Fortunes are building on war and on killing. I've got to know, yes, I've got to know now. I've got to know, yes, I've got to know, friend. Hungry lips ask me wherever I go. Comrades and friends all falling around me. I've got to know, yes, I've got to know. You locked me in jail, you put me in prison. Your hospital's jammed and your crazy house full. Why did your cop hurt my unarmed peace worker? I've got to know, yes, I've got to know. Now my friends are dying from AIDS and from cancer. Your big money goes where the death missiles fly, how built by good workers and paid by war taxes. I've got to know, yes, I've got to know why. I've got to know, yes, I've got to know, friend. Hungry lips ask me wherever I go. Comrades and friends all falling around me. I've got to know, yes, I've got to know. Well, thank you. Thank you for letting me sail off, into that direction. These days, if I'm going to leave my home at all, there ought to be something I want to get at, don't you think? And that's it. I'm going to sing. We're going to sing another song together, and then we're going to, as I said, have an intermission. You're going to go out and belly up to the bar and gorge yourself on viands. Red licorice. I want to see you sing with red licorice there. It's really, really grim. And I did bring some phonograph records. They're called CDs. Everything I do is CD. I got some stuff. I made one record I made up there in Nevada City, just myself. It was during the first Gulf War. I got really mad. I went into a little studio, and I said to the guy running it, I said, "Turn on the machine. I'm mad." And he put up the mics and turned it on, and I sat down and just sailed through this thing of songs, stories, poems, polemics, and rants about war and peace. And then I said, "I'm done, turn it off." He said, "Well, don't you want me to mix that?" I said, "No, I'm mad," and I just left. Well, I brought that with me. It's called I've Got to Know. And then folks have asked me often enough, said, "Did you ever make a record of just stories?" Music lovers, I suppose. And I did. The Moscow Hold and other stories. It's just stories. And then another one we made ourselves, made by the industrial workers of the world, the Wobblies, my union, the one I belonged to. This is my 50th year in the IWW. It was a free speech concert I did in San Francisco at a free speech rally, and so we brought that with us too. It's baseball season. I'm thinking about that in connection with the peace movement, I don't like professional sports. I don't like corporate sports at all. I like AA, AAA ball. I grew up watching Bob Feller pitch at Cleveland Stadium before he moved west in '47. I mean, I loved baseball, damn it. But I love the Little League, and we've got a gorgeous Little League park. Do you do Little League around here? Oh, you ought to. I mean, we have a good Little League there. But see, I want the Peace Center of Nevada County to field a Little League team. Wouldn't that be a good idea? And see, when the businesses sponsor the Little League, so their company name is on the jersey, so our team, when they go on the field, is going to say, "Reduce military spending." It's a good idea. This is a good idea. I mean, you got to mess with people. You just got to mess with people all the time. What was it? Here, let me show you something. Messing with people. Where is it? Okay, I got a website for you. I brought a bunch of these along with me, and I'll put them out on the table there. This is called clownarchy.org. That's a hell of an interesting website. You know, that's Frank Olivier, a great vaudevillian and juggler and a slack rope walker and wavy gravy. And now they just enlisted me. I'm a clownarchist now. And they're doing clown peace actions, nonviolent clown actions. They're doing them on BART right now. Hell of a good idea. So you check that out. Take one of those cards with you. My first clownarchy act, well, it's the Patriot Act, all right? And it's domestic surveillance and TIA, total information awareness, and tips and all that stuff closing in on us. And I thought, well, shit, let's join them. So I had a whole bunch of spy buttons made up, you know, like that. And I pass them out, and people wear them. You know, they put the spy buttons on. And what I do, you know, and the rap is, see, I say, okay, so when somebody walks up and says, what are you wearing that button? You got to look at them and say, I'm watching you. You do anything weird, I'm going to turn you in. You know, see? Now, if I get 10 million people doing that, we'll bust the whole program. We'll just bust the whole program. Hell. So I brought some of those. I'll just throw them out on the table. You take them with you. But see, I don't have a lot, so you make them. You can make buttons. You can do that. Okay. Let's see. Let's sing a song I learned from my mother. My mother was she worked briefly for the CIO, Congress Industrial Organizations. Our bedtime songs when we lived in Cleveland, when we were little kids, were labor songs, which is kind of a chore. You know, you've had a hard day in kindergarten, and you got to get some sleep, and your mother's sitting on the end of the bed. We're going to roll the union on. Mama, get lost. How do you get some sleep around this place? Maurice Sugar wrote this, the Forward Hunger March, 1932. I'm spending my night in a flop house. I'm spending my days on the street. I am looking for work, but I find none. I wished I had something to eat. Fairly basic song, huh? Oh, soup, soup. They gave me a bowl of soup. Soup, soup. They gave me a bowl of soup. You think you can handle that there? Okay. I worked 20 years in a factory. I did everything I was told. They said I was loyal and faithful, but now I am out in the cold. Oh, soup, soup. They gave me a bowl of soup. Soup, soup. They gave me a bowl of soup. I was up in Boise, Idaho, doing a job of work for the American Civil Liberties Union. They put me up in a crumbling Victorian pile that purported to be a hotel. I got up early and went out to get a newspaper. And I walked up the street, and out of the doorway stepped a young fella, said, "Hey man, you got any spare change?" That's happened, hadn't it? Well, I said, no, it's not that I'm an ungenerous soul. I fling money about with abandon when I've got it. But I said to him, look, I want you to go away. I'll wait right here. I want you to go get a gunny sack or a pillowcase and put a rock in it. Throw it over your shoulder and come back and walk up to me and say, excuse me, but I've got a chicken in this bag and I'm going to go on the edge of town and cook it up. But I don't have any salt. Could you spare some change for some salt? You get the difference? I'll pay for the story. I'm willing to pay for the story. I said, I want you to gaff me. I said, I want you to gaff me. What is a gaff? How does a fisherman bring in the fish? We use a gaffing hook. Who is the fish? The fish is the mark. How do you gaff the rubes when you're piping the stem? Are you following it? Is this too abstract for you? No. I mean, everybody's got a gaff. Teachers got a gaff. Preachers got to have. Lawyers got a gaff. I've got a gaff. God knows I'm doing it right now. I want to grab these spare change artists and rattle them and say, hey, man, where is that? Say, where's your sense of drama? Where's your sense of the theater of your situation? All the things that you could do with it, you know, gaffing. I learned from gaffing artists, the best and most creative in the American psyche, learning how to get through the world without doing anything. The rich have long since figured out how to do this. Why can't we? Why can't we? God. Gaffes, and it's all around us. I remember, well, in the election coming up, there's a fella sitting right now in the parking lot at the Lucky Supermarket there in Grass Valley, California, with a little cardboard sign that says, "Willing to vote Republican for food." Yeah. Hey, peace people, that's a bumper sticker right there. Okay, you got it. I was in Cambridge, and I was driving. I stopped for a light to change. Fellow standing on the median strip, big, tall fella, dressed in rags, had a folded-up cardboard sign. The top of it said, "What is the greatest nation on earth?" Got my attention. He let it flop down. It said, "Donation." Good for a couple dollars, isn't it? Hell yeah. Ironclad gaff, ironclad. Donna Devine, fellow worker Devine, up there in Butte, Montana, worked at the Copper King down on the flat. Terrible wages, worked as a waitress. She wanted to go to a wedding among her kin down in Florida, but she didn't. She maybe had enough money for gas in her old car to get there. She started off in the dead of winter over the belly of the continent. At midnight, hopefully in the driving rain and sleet, wherever she went, she would stop, pull into some run-down, greasy truck stop, get out and go into the restaurant, sit down in a dimly lit back booth, reach into her purse and take out a cupcake, put it on the table, reach back into her purse and take out a candle, put it in the cupcake, light it, and softly sing "Happy Birthday" to herself. Broke those truckers' hearts, broke their hearts. She couldn't pay for nothing, going or coming. I mean, hell, that's genius. That's brilliant. This should be in the scout manuals. This stuff, I should be teaching this in the schools. God. Oh, I saved $15 with my banker to buy me a car and a yacht. I went down to draw out my fortune. Hey, this is the answer I got. You guessed it. Oh, soup, soup. They gave me a bowl of soup, soup, soup. They gave me a bowl of soup. Slow motion Shorty. Now, he was an old gaffer. I learned gaffing off of him on the Denver, Rio Grande, and Western, you know, up in Grand Junction, Colorado. His gaff, this old man, his gaff was, he'd get off a train. He had a pocket full of these long balloons he used for making balloon animals. And he would go to a supermarket parking lot, wait for some couple to come out with a kid in tow between them. He would kneel down in front of them, arresting their course, whip out the balloons, stretch them out, blow them up, and then wrench them together into the semblance of a puppy. He wasn't any good at it. And the kid would reach for the puppy. He'd say, "This puppy costs $1. Go get $1 from your old man." Well, the kid would go over, start tugging on the old man's pants, whimpering. And while he was over there, Shorty'd take out his pocket knife, open up, put the blade up against the balloon. He'd say, "You wouldn't want me to kill the puppy in front of the little kid, would you?" He got through the world. Blackie was a guy. Blackie'd say, "The Lord gives me grace and the devil gives me style." And that was a plain fact of it, yeah. Oh, I fought in a war for my country. I went out to bleed and to die. I thought that my country would help me. Well, this was my country's reply. Oh, soup, soup. They gave me a bowl of soup, soup, soup. They gave me a bowl of soup. Oh, just one more, and then I will let you go. Dawdling Bill, the world's slowest human. Dawdling Bill, that's how he got his moniker, slow. His summer camp was up behind the Speedway Diner in Forsyth, Montana, and I visited there many times. He had that big Montana bedroll and skillfully embroidered on the side. In Latin were the words, "Mors ante servitium," death before employment. Words for our time. Should be a tattoo. Yeah, but I mean, he was, and I'm the world's slowest human. He said to me once, he was slow. He said, "I was born with a finite amount of hurrying power." If I squander my hurrying power, fruitlessly racing about, a dire event will transpire, but I will have exhausted my hurrying power and won't be able to get out of the way in time, and I will be done for. But if I hoard my hurrying power and that event transpires, I will unleash it all at once, and you will see me move like a rocket. The most exhaustive excuse for being lazy I ever heard of. But suits me fine. I saw Dawdlin Bill make $30 an hour on the streets of Spokane down on West Main, mainly in the evening. He worked in the evening, and he worked walking. He liked to fall in step with a young couple out taking the evening air. He would walk with them and engage them in a conversation. He'd say something like, well, I used to be a magician, and I was good, legerdemain, sleight of hand, all of that, but too many late hours, too much booze. Nobody wants a magician anymore anyway. Well, I used to be able to take a dollar bill and roll it up tight and push it up one side of my nose and pull it out the other. It's a cheap trick. 3 out of 5 people would go for it. He'd take the dollar bill and roll it up tight and jam it into his nose, say, well, I guess I forgot how to do it, and try to hand it back. You can do that out here tonight, right on the street. When I die and I get up to heaven, St. Peter will let me ride in. He can tell by the soup I was fed on, I was unable to sin. Oh, soup, soup, they gave me a bowl of soup. Soup, soup, they gave me a bowl of soup. Thank you. We'll see you in a little while.